morning. Good morning. Man, it is so good to be here this morning. Hey, my name is Nick. I'm one of the pastors here at Liberty Church, and it is awesome to be here this morning. And I'm excited to see what God's going to do in all of our lives this morning as we get started into our sermon today. And over the past couple of weeks, we've been going through a sermon series called Asking for a Friend, tackling those tough questions. And there's been some amazing questions asked, and we've had some amazing answers. And a lot of those questions were questions that I wanted to know the answers as well. And so as I was preparing for today, I'm the student pastor, and so I was asking my students, what is a question that you have that you would like answered? And a lot of the same answers came from a lot of students, and it said the same thing, and it said this: how do I get rid of the embarrassing things that I've done, those memories? How do I get the shame off of you? How do I get the shame off, right? And so the same question was like, they said, how do I forget the cringy things? How do I get rid of the cringe in my life, right? That's what they would say. And there was the same theme across all these different weeks that we were asking this question. And these students were struggling with the idea of the shameful things they've done and how they cannot forget what it felt like. And I like to encourage them and say, well, guess what? You're not alone, because all of us in this room have done something we're ashamed of before, right? We've all done something that we are ashamed of. And so it reminds me of a time, and this is something that happened to me when I was a young child, and I will never forget it because of how embarrassed I was. But I was in church, and I was running around. It was a large atrium, and I was one of those kids that after church, I'm just running around in the whole building, just run around like literally there's no rules. Because to me, there was no rules at that time. And I remember there was this sixth grade guy. He was so scary, right? Because I was like 8 years old, 7 years old. And I was so terrified of this sixth grader, and he was like running around saying, I'm going to get you guys. Of course, like every kid, you're like, this is the end of my life. This is it. This is all I got left. And I have to go to the one place where I feel safe in this room, and it was my dad, right? When you're a kid, you run to your parents, and you go, oh my gosh, please, please, please save me, right? So I was in this moment, and I was terrified. I was like, this is it. I'm going to die at church. This is crazy. And I remember running up and grabbing my dad's leg. I was really young, and I was like, Dad, please save me. He's going to get me. And then I look up, and I remember this from first-person view. I look up, and my dad's standing across from me. And then I realize I'm holding onto a random person's leg. I'm 7 years old, and I have no idea where my dad is. This is not my dad, right? And I remember that moment. I was so embarrassed. I was so ashamed of what I had done because I was in this intimate moment, like, please save me. You're not my dad. I have no idea where my dad is. And I was terrified, right? And so there's so many things that we do in life that we feel this immense feeling of shame. And like I said, it's literally been almost 20 years, and I still remember how I felt in that exact moment. And so we go through things in life, and things happen to us, and we experience immense shame. How do I heal from that? How do I move from having all this shame on my shoulders to putting them off and say, what do I do? And so I want to start with a quick thing here. Most of the time in my life, there was always something that was your most unhealthy thing that you deal with. For some of us, it could be something that we are constantly eating and putting in our bodies, or some of us, it may be something that we decide to do. But for me, the most unhealthy thing that I have in my entire life is the shame that I deal with. Is the remembrance of the things that I've done, the cringiness of what I said, what I had done, what I was going to do, what I had, how I treated someone. Those are the things that are the most unhealthy things in my life. Because I can't forget them. I can't get them off of my shoulders. So before we tackle that question, how to get the shame off you, I want to pray. Dear Lord, thank you for this moment that we can sit here and we can open up your word. And God, I just pray for the entire service that as we are continuing to read exactly what you say and how you are here to remove the shame from our shoulders, I just want to pray that you will just have your way this morning. In your name we pray. Amen. And I want to start with a verse that a lot of us will know and we've read before, and it's in Genesis 2:25, and it says, and the man and his wife were both naked, and they were not ashamed. Now, I want to focus on that last part. They were not ashamed, okay? They had no shame whatsoever. They had no idea what it was. They had no idea what it felt like, and they were not ashamed. And then as the story goes on, we know that the enemy comes in, deceives both of them, and says, hey, check out this apple. Heard you're pretty hungry. Go ahead and take a bite. Now, you did something that was bad. And they both said, oh my gosh, We disobeyed. We did something that was really, really, really bad. And then the enemy says, well, since you did that thing that was really, really bad, you must be bad, right? You must be horrible. Because you just disobeyed exactly what God told you not to do, but yet you did it anyways. So what you did became that you're bad, right? And so that's the first thing I want to look at today is the difference between guilt and shame. The difference between guilt and shame is a huge thing we have to understand. Because they ate of the apple, they did something bad, they had guilt. But then the enemy says, you know what, no, not just guilt. You are bad, right? Guilt believes that I am bad. And there's a quote that I want to share with you this morning. It's by a lady named Brene Brown, and she wrote many, many books about shame and what it means and how it affects us in our minds and physically how it affects us. And it says this: shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. So basically what it's saying is, no matter what we've gone through, we are unworthy of Christ's love. We are unworthy of the love of one another. We do not belong. And it says something we've experienced, done, or failed to do makes us unworthy of connection. Unworthy of the connection of Christ. That's what shame does. Shame is not just a feeling that we feel. Shame is something that we become, right? We start putting that on, and that's our identity. That's who we are. And we say, this is breaking me apart. And no matter whether it's an addiction that you have, you say, you know what? If I just keep this hidden for the rest of my life, it'll be okay. Or maybe it's the financial debts, the decisions you're making, and you feel like it's crippling you, and you say, you know what? If no one finds out about this, it'll be okay. Maybe it's what you're doing in your free time, what you're clicking on, what you're watching, what you're saying, what you're smoking, what you're drinking. It could be anything that you're struggling with. It becomes shame. And what happens is, because of what you did, the enemy says, I'm going to connect that action to you, and I want you to start to believe yourself as defective. I want you to believe that you are not worth it. You are not good enough because of what you did. Not because of who you are, but because of what you did. And what this is called shame-based thinking. This is called shame-based thinking. This is a mindset that a lot of us develop over time when we go through things in our life, and it's how we view the world. It's how we view what we're walking through in our daily lives. And so the thing is, there's multiple ways this could be. But I want to share 3 quick things about exactly what shame-based thinking is like, and maybe one of these things will fall to you. And the first one is this: we are vulnerable to perfectionism. We are vulnerable to perfectionism. We want to silence our shame with a perfect performance. With a perfect performance, right? Because if I can just do such a great job here at my presentation this week at work, they'll forget that I don't feel good enough. They'll forget that I'm not good enough for this job. I shouldn't have this job to begin with. But yet if I can do a perfect job, maybe I'll get an attaboy, or you did great. Better luck. We'll do it next time, right? You're going to do it again next week, just as good. And so we take a perfect performance and we want it to hide the things that we deal with. Number 2 is this: we are critical of ourselves, which drives us to become critical of others. Often the most critical people that you're around are the ones that are dealing with the most shame. You ever around those people who are like, hey, you did a great job. I would have done this a little differently. You should have done this. You should have stood like this. You put an arm like this. Whatever it is, right? They would critique you on every little detail. Well, oftentimes, they're the ones that are dealing with the most shame about themselves. They're the ones that are struggling daily with the fact that they don't feel like they're good enough to do it either. So what they're going to do is they're going to point out every single little detail about you so that they can feel better about themselves. Number 3, and this is a good one. We use self-defeating thoughts to shield ourselves from disappointment. We say worst case scenario, right? And so going back to that presentation, maybe you say, hey guys, listen, just to let you know, my dog got sick. I wasn't able to work on my presentation. Then I had food poisoning, and then I couldn't sleep, and then my car broke down, and I had all these things, and all these things happened in my life. So therefore, if my presentation isn't as good, you know why. You got the excuse, right? I want to take the worst case scenario and lower the expectations, so therefore, if I actually do a good job, it'll be okay, right? Maybe I'll feel better about myself. And I do this to myself all the time. You say, you get invited to go play, like a new sport I've been playing has been pickleball. I've been playing pickleball a lot with some of my friends, and it's a lot of fun, right? And I remember the first time I went out, I did this exact same thing because I was afraid that I was going to be bad, I said, I'm not very good. I'm not very good at all. I'm not athletic. I'm not going to be able to do anything. I can't even hardly run. What is a paddle? I don't even know what this is, right? And I told them that I wasn't good. Was I actually good? No, I wasn't. But the thing is, I wanted to lower those expectations so I could feel better about myself. So I could feel like I was doing okay. So I could feel like that I was liked. Those are just a few things of what shame-based thinking is. And it's not from God. It's not how you should be living your life. We should be living our life through the lens of Jesus Christ, and that's the way we should be living. As a kid, I saw a lot of things happen in life, and I saw a lot of things at a younger age of just difficulty in life and watching family members go through different things, and I saw a lot of problems. And it became a responsibility to me to try to fix those problems. And you can't fix every problem. So when you can't fix every problem, you feel responsible. And so at a young age, I started to develop this weird feeling to make sure I could fix every single thing that I saw that was wrong. I wanted to do my very best so that everyone could believe that I was good enough or I was enough. And I made it my whole entire childhood about fixing problems because all I wanted to do was fix those problems. But guess what? I couldn't. And my dominant shame belief that I struggle with is that I'm not enough, that I'll never be enough, that I'm lacking in some way, right? And here's the thing. This first picture on the screen is actually a picture of, I was 8 years old, and so I was living a good life, pretty happy. I had all the things that I needed, all the things that I wanted, right? But little did I know later that year I would start to develop a fear of what people thought about me. And I started to develop a way of lying about myself so people would think that I was good enough. So I had a great little life. I was 8 years old. I was living life, right? But yet I developed this amount of shame in my life where I felt that Nick wasn't good enough. Nick didn't measure up. So I started to lie about it. I started to tell people stories about who I really was, and it wasn't true. And this next photo is actually me in 12th grade. I was super involved in everything that I did. I wanted to play every single sport. I wanted to be a part of every single club. I wanted to do, once again, my very best and put on a perfect performance because I wanted others to think that I was good enough. I wanted others to think that I could do it, right? And everyone said, Nick's the great kid. He's so awesome. Everyone should be like him. He's fantastic, right? That's what all my friends were telling me. But little did they know, it was coming up on my last sports season as a senior in high school. I was going to play my last spring season, and I got caught cheating on a test and was therefore ineligible to play my last season of sports that summer, or that spring. So little did I have all this thing happening, and everyone thought I was amazing, but yet I was cheating, and I got caught, and therefore I wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. And this last one is a part of my life where I was in college, and I was running away from everything that I could possibly think of. I knew I was called into ministry. I said, I don't want to do that. I knew I was called to be around people that I loved, and I don't want to do that. So I would go on and leave and go on these hiking trips and all these trips just because I was trying to find a place where my shame wasn't so loud. Find a place where my shame wasn't weighing me down to where I couldn't walk. And I share all of this to say that I am no longer ashamed of my past. I am no longer ashamed of who I've become because by the grace of God, I have been forgiven, I have been set free, and I have been given the power and the mercy of Jesus Christ. It may look perfect on the outside sometimes. I promise you it's not. And I was struggling with the fact that I am not enough. I am not enough. Even after everything that I have gone through, I still struggle that I am not enough. The good news is, I'm not ashamed of my past. But the bad news is, I still battle with shame-based thinking. I still battle with the daily, day in and day out challenge of saying, I am good enough, right? I am. That root cause started when I was a kid because I wanted to fix everything. And I knew that I wasn't enough. I was always deficient. I was always lacking. And that's why I want to work so hard and have a perfect performance so that I can show people that I am. And all I end up doing is medicating this pain, hoping to justify who I am and my value, trying to cover it up. And as a husband to my wife Ashley, and as a son, as a brother to my 2 siblings, as a friend to many, and a pastor, I won't be able to fix everything. There are going to be so many things that I struggle with my entire life that I will not be able to fix. And I have to be okay with that. I have to be okay with the fact that I will fail and I will not measure up. I can't be everything. I disappoint many people daily. That right there is so true. I disappoint many people daily. And because I can't be there, it reinforces my shame. And it tells me that I am not enough. The thing is, we weren't designed to be perfect. We weren't designed to be perfect. I heard someone say, I think I'm a little rude sometimes, and I'm over here going, no, you are rude. I've heard what you said. I've heard how you act. You are rude. And the thing is, if we think we might be something, more than likely it's true about us. It's like, hey, I think that there's some times where I really struggle with complaining. No, you do. You do struggle with complaining. I hear it all the time, right? And I say that not to be funny, but it's because the problem, as long as you're focused on yourself, you will always struggle with the shame. You will always struggle with it because we aren't good enough. We weren't designed to be good enough. And that's the first step for us to be understanding, is that we weren't designed for that. So there's a story that I love, and it's the Israelites. The Israelites were in slavery for 430 years. 430 years. That's not just one lifetime, that's generations. That's people being born into slavery and not knowing why they're there. That's people being born into it and having the shame of being a slave. They felt invaluable. They believed the lie that they were nothing. But then we know that God raised up a man named Moses, and he said, let my people go, and they were freed from slavery. But the thing is, they may have been freed from slavery. They weren't freed from the shame of slavery. They weren't freed from the shame and the pain that they felt for 430 years. They weren't. Outwardly, they were freed, but inwardly, they were still slaves to shame. Some of you are followers of Christ, and you've been forgiven, but just because your sin is forgiven, some of you are still slaves to the shame about something that is not true about you. You've believed the lie that the shame that you're experiencing is true, and it's not. The only way to heal from shame is to move the focus from what I'm not to who Christ is. Though you've been forgiven by Christ, you're still living with shame-based thinking. Now, what does this have to do with the gospel? The only way to heal from shame is to move that focus. How do we do that? How do we move that focus? See, we see this in Hebrews 12:2. It's a special verse that I love so much, and it speaks of Jesus on the cross, and he's about to give his life, and there are 3 words that stand out. And I want to read that really quick. It says, for the joy set before him, Jesus endured the cross. He endured the cross for what was coming. He endured the cross for you today. He endured the cross for you in your life. And these 3 words, scorning its shame. Scorning its shame, loathing its shame, despising the shame. He said, I'm going to stand here on this cross, and I'm going to hold up all the shame that you could ever have in your life, not for the people back then, but for you today sitting in these seats. He's scorning its shame. Every fiber, every part of Jesus was loathing of that shame. He said, I'm going to take it away because it has no power anymore. He says, I hated it, I scorned it, I despise the shame that robs people from the intimacy with God. From the beginning of time, God scorned the shame of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. He hated the shame of Peter's betrayal and Judas' betrayal, Peter's denial and betrayal. And in the very same way, God scorned the shame that crushes your soul. He hates it. He wants to take it from you. He wants you to be free of it. He wants you to be a lighter walking around with it, not weighing down your shoulders. For me, and the shame that I've shared today, the things that I deal with, when I feel that I can't fix those problems or when I'm not enough, the only way to heal from the shame is to move the focus from what I'm not to who Christ is. From what I'm not to who Christ is. Now, we've dealt with so many different things, right? We deal with guilt every single day. We deal with shame all the time. And the thing is, I want you guys to understand there's a difference between that guilt and shame, like we spoke about earlier. There is a main difference. Guilt is someone, like this. I remember when I was a kid, I was playing baseball at the time, and I told my dad, I was like, hey, I got all these old apples. They're molding. What I'm going to do, Dad, since I'm a baseball player, is I'm going to go take this bag of apples, and I'm going to go throw them at this tree, and they're going to explode, right? Like any boy would want to do, right? And he tells me, son, be careful. I don't want you to break anything. And I'm like, break anything? Come on, man. I'm playing baseball, dude. I'm like 11 years old. Like, I got you. This tree is like 20 feet in diameter, right? This tree is massive. There's no way I can miss this tree. I get up there. I'm like warming up. And I threw this beautiful curveball. Misses the tree completely. Breaks a window. I experienced this guilt of this moment. And it's okay that sometimes we feel guilty about something we do because we're not perfect people, but I didn't let the guilt of that moment tell me that I'm not a good baseball player or that I can't throw the ball. And that's what I want you to know this morning. Just because we go through things in life doesn't mean that we become bad people, because we must focus on moving everything to be about us, be about Christ. You guys ready to do that this morning? So as we tackle this question, there's a blank I want to throw up, and I want you guys to kind of think about this for a moment. And it's something that is really important for you to understand, is that I am not, because of Christ, I am. I want you to just take a moment and think about that. And what would you write in that? What would you fill in? Because for me, it's a lot of different things. I am not because Christ I am. Maybe it's this. Maybe it's I am not horrible because of Christ I am forgiven. Because of Christ I am forgiven. Maybe it's this. I am not sick because of Christ I am healed. Maybe it's I am not broken because of Christ I'm made whole. Maybe it's I am not unwanted because of Christ I am loved. I know that I am loved, I am accepted, I am forgiven, I am made new, I am chosen, I am set apart by Jesus Christ, and all of you guys are this morning as well. It could be anything that you deal with. It could be any amount of shame. It could be any amount of sorrow, any amount of pain. For me, I am not enough. And I'll never be enough. And I understand that. But Christ is more than enough. Christ is everything that I need to be made whole. Nick will never do it by himself. I will never succeed without Christ. I will never be anything without him. Because of who he is and because of what he has done. The shame doesn't hold me anymore, and the shame doesn't hold you this morning. The shame does not hold you back. Remember the Israelites, 430 years. 430 years they walked through slavery. Many of them had no idea why they were there. And then they were out of slavery, but the shame of slavery wasn't out of them. Today, I think God wants to take your shame. He wants to remove it from you. He wants to say, you don't have to carry it anymore. In Joshua 5:9, it says this. Then the Lord said to Joshua, Today, I have rolled away the shame of the slavery in Egypt. He has rolled away the shame in your life today. Not yesterday, today. He has rolled it away, and you don't have to carry it anymore. You are made new, you are made whole in Christ because he has rolled it away. What does this mean for me? What does this mean for me? We're talking about how to answer this question. What do I take? If you're relatively new with being fully devoted with Christ and you say, I don't really know what the next step is. How do I get the shame away? Maybe it's just sitting in the presence of God. Maybe it's just focusing on him, his presence. Whether it's just reading, listening to worship music, having that moment where you say, God, I'm here. Share with me what you need to share with me. Maybe you've been doing that and you've been moving forward with your walk with Christ and you say, how do I continue? Things are getting harder. The shame seems to be creeping back. The shame-based thinking hasn't left yet. What do I need to do? Well, plugged into the church. Get serving in a group. Be a part of a group. Getting plugged in, because we cannot do this alone. There are so many of us in this room that are walking beside each other in groups, helping each other for them to be able to achieve what they need. And maybe you're sitting in here and you don't even know who Jesus is. Maybe you're sitting here and you walked in this morning feeling like 900 pounds of shame was on your shoulders and you had no idea what to do next. Maybe you walked in here not knowing a single person, but yet God said, give me your shame. God said, give it to me. I want to take it. And I'm going to roll it away today. There is no other time but today, because he's going to roll it away. And here's the thing. Maybe you need to focus on Christ and take that next best step. I don't know about you, but the shame that God removes from all of us in our lives is a weight that needs to be lifted. Our society, our kids, all of us in this room, we carry shame. And the thing is, we don't have to. We don't have to carry it every single day, because we have a God that saves us and has died on the cross, rose 3 days later for you. He has rolled away your shame. Will you pray with me? Father, we come to you this morning so eager for you to remove the shame from our lives. And Lord, I just pray for everyone in this room that as they experience what's going on through their lives, and as they continue to move on, that you would continue to pull that shame away from them. God, I pray that if there's anybody in this room right now that needs prayer, that they would just raise their hand and say, I need prayer. I need prayer. I'm going through so much shame in my life that I need to give it to him. I need you, Christ. Maybe this morning you walked in and you have no idea that you needed to follow Jesus, that you need to sell out and follow him with everything that you are. And if you are in that boat this morning, that you would pray this prayer with me. It says, Lord, I know and I admit that I am nothing and that I am not enough, but in you I can be made whole, and that I believe that you are the one that died on the cross for me, and I will change my life and follow you. If that is you this morning and you prayed that prayer, I'd like for you to raise your hand. And there'll be a card that will be put out in your hand. And we'd like for you to fill that out so that we can continue praying for you. You can put it in the offering bucket as it comes through. Lord, we just thank you for everything that you are and everything you continue to be. God, we just want you to take our shame. You have rolled away our shame.